What's up, data nerds? I am back this time to give you some info, some data, some trends for the divisional round of our 2020 NFL playoffs. If you were here yesterday, or checked the channel yesterday, we uploaded the picks, predictions, bets, all that kind of good stuff. So if you're looking for bets and free picks, check out yesterday's video. It'll be linked in the comment section below. As for our data and trends for this week, let's actually recap first what we learned from the wildcard round, and then we'll go ahead and move forward with what the historical data and trends show for this upcoming divisional round. As far as our wildcard uh, weekend, last weekend, a couple things. So, one, it was different in the sense that only 33% of the games ended up being one score games, meaning that at the end of the game, the score was decided by 7 points or less. And usually, and actually, I say the last 3 years, we had 3 out of 4 games, or 75% of the games, end up being one score games. So the games were much more of a blowout than usual. That could be because of COVID, could be because there's no fans, could be a few things, but we'll kind of work on that throughout the off season. For right now, the important part is that that's a huge difference. It's literally less than half of what we were expecting. So as far as favorites are concerned, which are typically the home teams, only only two of the favorites won. So 2 out of 6, which gives us 33% of the favorites actually covered. That is not necessarily won, but just covered. The favorites teased, and this is kind of where it gets interesting. So if you had teased favorites across the board, 4 out of 6 of them won when they were teased, meaning 67% of the favorites were able to cover if you teased them. The dogs, on the other hand, 100% of the dogs would have covered for you if you teased them up. So any of the dogs you would have taken, again, if you tease them with just a 6 point teaser, they would have covered. Now, what's important to note about that is, like I said, the 3 previous years, 3 out of the 4 games ended up being one score games. So I haven't dug through the data yet, but I can if somebody's looking for that. Somebody wants to add any comments, just saying that's something they're interested in. 3 out of the 4 games for the last 3 years were one score games, meaning that even if you were a 1 point dog or 1.5 point dog, a 6 point teaser would have gotten you to 7 or 7.5, and you would have covered. So at least 75% of the dogs would have covered the last 3 years in that situation. And I have a feeling it's probably closer to 100 as well, because usually we don't see 1 point spreads for the wild card weekend. It's usually at least 2 to 3 points. So pretty good record there as far as teasing dogs in that wild card round. So obviously we can't use it again this year, but it's a good note to remember for next year, especially once we get into the wild card round. Something I'm really going to be looking forward to using moving forward, or at least kind of keeping in my back pocket when it comes to handicapping. As far as SOS wins, so if you're looking at the screen, we have two last columns here on my spreadsheet. So one is SOS, or strength of schedule win, meaning how many times did the team with the tougher strength of schedule, the harder road into the playoffs, end up winning against the team that wasn't as battle tested? So 67% of the teams that had a harder road to the playoffs or harder strength of schedule ended up winning. The only two that lost were the Seahawks to the Rams. They had the second hardest schedule for path to the playoffs. The Rams had the 27th easiest or the fifth hardest, however you want to look at that. Uh, Not a huge difference. So there are about 4 spots of a difference. Not really enough to make a difference there. As far as the other team, that was the Ravens. So the Ravens actually had the third easiest schedule, third easiest path to the playoffs. Titans had the eighth easiest. Obviously, the Titans won that game, and I'm sorry, the Ravens won that game, and the Titans had the harder schedule to get into the playoffs. But again, it's 5 spots, so not a huge difference there. All of the other teams were at least 7 spots away, or 20% harder as far as their schedules were concerned. So moving forward, if one team has a strength of schedule that was harder by at least 20%, then we'll know that that's at least something we need to take into account when our handicapping comes into play. In just a second, I'm going to show you the strength of schedule for the teams that are playing this coming weekend, as well as every other team for that matter. But the last column I have here is coaching grade win percentage. So out of my personal coaching grades that I put up on the website, and that again is going to take into account QBR, EDSR, pass rate, run rate, one score, win percentage, how good is your coach at winning these one score games. A whole lot of other data gets into that. But the teams that had the higher coaching grade won 67% of the time. So again, something else we want to take into account. If my coaching grade is saying that they're going to win, it's it's a it's a better better than not chance that they are going to win. As far as the strength of schedule, as I promised, here it is. And this is per sharpfootballstats.com. Warren Sharp, one of my favorite guys to listen to. So this is the strength of schedule for offenses. And the offensive strength of schedule here, really, as far as what we're looking for in this divisional round, what we'll notice as soon as it populates for me here is that the Ravens actually had the third easiest schedule for the entire year. The Bills had the 20th easiest, uh, meaning the Bills had a much harder path to get here. So the Bills, again, per my previous stats, should have about a 67% chance of winning based on just this one data point. Not that we want to bet on one data point, but something to again keep in mind. As far as the other teams, the Chiefs had the ninth easiest schedule, and the Rams had the 27th easiest schedule. The Browns had the 13th, and Saints and Bucks are actually very similar at 23rd and 24th. So that's really a toss-up. Like we said earlier, we want to see at least 7 spots of difference. Uh, Take a look at it. If you need to pause the video, write this down. Whatever you want to do to just make sure that you're aware of the different strength of schedule per these teams. And just keep in mind the ones that are closer to the top, the 1, 2, 3, 4, these are the easiest schedules. The ones at the bottom are the hardest schedules. So again, keep that in mind. One thing I do want to note before we move forward, Seahawks had the 31st easiest or the second hardest schedule, and somehow they were still able to make the playoffs. Now, they did just fire their offensive coordinator, but I'd be interested to see how good they are next year because they should theoretically have an easier path to get back to the playoffs next year. Moving forward, the Bills and Ravens. I just want to go over my matchup chart here. Get really more into the weeds as far as data is concerned. I know a lot of people, that's what we're looking for. We don't want just feels and, well, they looked good or they look bad. I heard a lot of touts saying that the Bills looked bad in the matchup last week with the Colts. The Colts are probably the toughest matchup for the Bills because of their defense, because of the way they play and where they scheme up their linebackers as well as their safeties to come up and take away their short passing routes. Let's take a look at some of the numbers though. So the Bills have the advantage as far as passing early down success rate. Really, it's a 6 point advantage, but the bigger thing to note here is that the Ravens have less than 50% success as far as early down success when passing. If you heard my video yesterday, you probably know the Ravens need to win on a small margin of victory. They are going to have to play a perfect game, in my opinion, to win this game or at least come up with some turnovers. And having a success rate under 50 means that really one bad pass, one catch, or sorry, one drop can really set you back for a whole series. And that's not something they can afford to do against the Bills. As far as the run rate is concerned, the Ravens have a 55% success rate when it comes to running, which is amazing if they can stay with the run game. The Bills have 48% success rate with the run, and these numbers are all adjusted for the opposing defense. So 48% EDSR on the run rate, not great. I will say though, it is easier to stay away from the run and kind of go pass heavy early in the game and just keep that moving forward. It's a lot easier to do than to try and run the ball and not pass it because when you're running, you really have to have the game script go your way. It makes a very small margin of victory, like I said. As far as the coaching grade, we have a 6 point advantage for the Bills over the Ravens. So again, that's not a slight difference. That's pretty significant as far as teams that are in the playoffs, meaning that on that one data point alone, it's about a 67% chance that the Bills should win, just given my historical data from my coaching grades. As far as the blitz rate, so do these teams blitz a lot? Yes, they both do. The Bills blitz almost 36% of the time. Ravens blitz 44% of the time. The important thing to note with that is that when the Bills are playing, if they are playing up against a heavy blitz package, they have, or team, I should say, heavy blitzing team, they have won 70% of the time. The Ravens, on the other hand, have only won 33% of the time when they're playing against a heavy blitz. So even though Lamar Jackson has a lot of mobility, you think he'd do really well getting away from that pressure, they just haven't fared well against the blitz. Maybe that's because their run game gets stifled, but for whatever rhyme or reason, they just have not fared well against that. The personnel set is really the next big note here. So the Bills love running a 10 package, which is four wide receivers. The Ravens, on the other hand, struggle to stop the 10 personnel, and that is vital because they have been giving up over 80% successful plays when the opponent comes out with a 10 personnel package, well above the Bills' regular EDSR. That's not good. The Ravens have got to make sure they keep their receivers in check from the Bills. That is, guys like Cole Beasley and John Brown, they can go off. And those guys, if they get going with slant routes and curl routes and quick off the line movements, pre-snap movement, it's going to be a long day for the Ravens. So the Ravens have got to formulate a plan to do that, to stop that from happening to them, because it could just totally mess up their day. As far as directional tendencies, the Bills do love to pass short, left, or right. They actually have 59% of their passing plays go short, left, or right, which they've been able to accumulate 108 quarterback rating when they pass short, left, and right. Ravens allow a 98 quarterback rating to those particular passes. So again, just not really looking good for the Ravens. They're gonna have to address that passing concern. They're gonna need to almost predict the play calling from the Bills, and they're going to need to adjust their safeties or corners to come up, take away those short routes. Not so much put pressure on Josh Allen, which obviously it's good if you can, but I would be more concerned with taking away those short passing lanes and really putting someone in the middle to not give him these easy passes all day. As far as the Ravens are concerned, 66% of their runs are from the center to the right tackle or outside of the right tackle. They average 5.5 yards per carry when they're running to the right, with a 57% success rate. The Bills allow a 52% success rate to the right. So, again, it's over 50%, so that's good. But if we take the average there, and let's even say it's 54% that they're successful to the right, again, you're not leaving yourself a lot of room for error. So, if the Ravens have a bad turnover, they get stopped one too many times, a drop, somebody trips in the backfield, anything like that can really set these guys back. And like I said, I'm not saying the Ravens can't win. If you think they can, if you think that they just look better, that you had some sort of feel that they have a good matchup with the Bills, by all means, take that bet. Just know they're going to have to play a perfect game to win. If you're looking at the money line, they could possibly cover, but I will tell you just from again historical data, and this year in particular, only 8% of games in the NFL end in 1 or 2 point differentials, meaning that you have a 92% chance if the Bills win that they're going to cover. They're either going to push or cover, depending on the number you get. I got it at Bills -2.5. If you get it at -3, it's a 92% cover rate, assuming that they win. Now, one other note here regarding the Ravens. This is a back-to-back travel spot for them, so they obviously had to travel last week. They're traveling again this week to play the Bills. If you go back even further than that, they had to travel for their last regular season game. So this is the third time they're having to travel within 3 weeks. They have not had a lot of rest. This is going to be a cold game. Lamar Jackson has never played in the snow, so you're going to hear a lot of points saying that the snow is bad for the Bills. It's going to be hard for them to air the ball out, to move the ball as efficiently as they typically do. Keep in mind, Lamar Jackson has never played in the snow. So whether he's running or passing, we don't know what he's going to look like in the snow. And that third week of traveling, it does catch up with you. Not only that, but you have to assume that they had at least one less day to prepare, whether that was the travel from their last game back home or from their travel home to the Bills this week. So either way, they're going to be missing a day on their travel path. Last thing I would note here, strength of schedule offensively. The Ravens had the third easiest offensive strength of schedule, like we saw earlier. Defensively, they had the fourth easiest strength of schedule. Bills had the 20th easiest or the 13th hardest strength of schedule as far as offense is concerned. Defensively, they had the 12th easiest schedule. So defensively, they didn't play the hardest schedule there is, but it was much more difficult than the Ravens as far as on paper is concerned. So, like I said, another factor that says 67% of the time, the Bills should be winning this game. If you look at the bottom here, if you're looking at your screen, this is just your average points scored and allowed. Not so much that these are going to be accurate or this is a predictive matter. This is really more to show where the coaches are putting emphasis. Are they trying to score early? Are they trying to get out and just get a big lead early in the game? Or are they making adjustments and they're scoring off of those adjustments? For example, the Bills score a lot in the second quarter. The theory with that is going to, whether it's my theory or just the, logic, when they come out, they're running their game. Whether it works or does not work, doesn't matter. They're going to make those adjustments based off what the defense is allowing them to do. They're going to go into the second quarter with those adjustments, score, go into halftime. Defense makes their adjustments. Third quarter is not so great. Fourth quarter, they counteract the adjustments that were made at halftime, and they're scoring a lot again. So that's typically what we see with the Bills. Again, not that these numbers are going to be specifically accurate, but it's something to keep in mind as far as, if you see the Bills go down early or the Ravens maybe have a good first quarter, don't get too caught up on it. Don't try and jump on the live bets. Let it play out. Let's see what happens at halftime. My bet for this one, as I said earlier, is going to be Bills minus 2.5. Comment below if you think I'm wrong, if I missed something, if there's another angle that I'm just not seeing here, if there's any stats, any data that you'd like to know before we get further along into the playoffs, even though we're getting kind of close to the end at this point. Last thing I want to leave you guys with here is a divisional round data from last year. Last year, 25% of the games ended in one-score games, whereas the average over the last 5 years was 60%. So meaning 2 to 3 games per year were ending in one-score games. This could definitely be one of them, and I think this year we're going to see a regression to the mean, meaning that we should have at least 2 games here end in one-score games. It's going to be pretty exciting, but also great as far as something to note when you're looking at the spreads. Secondly, home team winning percentage. The Bills are the home team in the game I'm talking about, but just across the board. The home team has won 80% of the time over the last 5 years. That's about 3 home teams that win every year, possibly 4. But with that being said, 3 home teams winning, strength of schedule, my coaching grade, the way that the defenses are playing, really everything is pointing to the Bills for me. And the reason I'm bringing them up and specifically talking about them is that's my favorite. That's my best bet of the week. Again, if you think I'm missing something, please share. I'd be happy to hear it. Maybe even hedge it if you're convincing enough. But either way, guys, hope everything was helpful. If you need to pause the screen, look at the stats, look at the data, by all means feel free to do so. We don't mind copying and cheating here. But have a great day, have a good weekend, good luck during the NFL playoffs, and see you guys soon.